everyone, welcome back. It's once again time for Actual English, and I'm Jennifer Clyde. It's time for lesson 203, and today's topic is voting. Now, previously we talked about what? Secret ballots. Today, let's focus on voting itself. Now, voting really gives us an opportunity to express how we feel about certain issues and in what laws or bills are passed. Of course, it depends on which country you live in or of which country you're a citizen of. But for example, there are various systems and ways to vote. In the US and the UK, there is an internet voting system, which means that you can vote through the net. I don't believe that's possible in Korea, though. So people basically have the option of going in person to vote, or they can choose to vote through the internet or on the internet if they wish to, and that's called internet voting system. There's also something that I briefly mentioned in our previous lesson called absentee voting. Now, let's say, for example, this is, for example, a U.S. citizen. There is a U.S. citizen, an American residing in Korea, and when he or she wants to vote, instead of flying all the way to the United States, what he or she could do is vote here, and that's what is called absentee voting. I believe that is possible for almost all citizens of all different countries, even Koreans. Even if you do live abroad, you can vote, but you do have to go to a certain location or a place in order to vote. But what I mean by absentee voting is that you do not have to return to your native country. Now, in America, you can vote when you're 18 or over, and I believe it's a bit, the age system is 20, I believe. You need to be 20 or over in order to vote in Korea. So there are slight differences depending on each and every country. Anyhow, let's talk about voting today. Here we go with Actual Talk.
So one of the biggest things I remember from college was the first time I got to vote. And it was my freshman year in college, so my first year of college, everything was new. I just turned 18, so I was just legally able to vote. And it was the first election where, Obama was elected into office.
Okay.
So it was I just remember it was all this craziness. Everyone was so excited. And I think in college, everyone wants to make a difference. And so they were all standing in line for hours just to vote.
Well, I think that particular election had a lot of media frenzy around it.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy.
So it was a bit special, I think.
Yeah, and I think, yes, there's something about that election I remember more than any other election was, especially the younger generation, really, all the college students coming to vote, wanting to make a change. And I remember all these petitions and campaign strategies, even on campus.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think in Korea tends to be, the people who vote on their feet tend to be sort of the older generations.
Right.
I think the voting age is similar with all of our countries, around 18.
Right.
But I think in Korea tends to bring out the conservatives on voting day.
Oh, yeah. I think I just remember when it's election days in Korea, when I'm watching a TV show, they'll have the pan on the bottom,
right,
with all the votes and the percentages, and I think it's very interesting. And I think one problem is, though, even in the States, is getting the younger people to vote. How can you?
I mean, do you think it's important for young people to vote?
I think it's definitely important. You can exercise your, opinions and make a difference. It's kind of a right that you have. And
right. I mean, the biggest thing I think is, if you have a feeling or an opinion about something, well, then you should vote on your feet and actually vote.
Right.
Go to the ballot station and cast your vote.
Yeah, definitely. So hopefully younger people in the next election will be more represented.
Totally.
Well, today we're talking about voting, everyone, and we got some help from Eugene and Michelle. Now, Michelle did mention something about how she remembered when she voted years ago, and this was when Obama was elected into office. So they even mentioned something about how more and more of the younger generation are voting compared to perhaps a decade ago, which is a good sign, I think. Okay, let's take a look at the actual talk conversation. Michelle says, one of the biggest things I remember from college was the first time I got to vote. So here she's talking about her very first experience, the very first time she was able to vote and the first time she voted. So this was what? I guess a couple of years ago when she was in college. It was my freshman year in college. Of course, usually in your freshman year, a lot of the students are 18 years old, and that's when you are able to vote. She says, so my first year of college, everything was new. Everything's quite new and interesting. She says, I just turned 18. I just turned 18. I just became 18 years old. So I was legally able to vote. Able to vote. It's very simple. But if you're legally able to vote, you're saying that by law, you are eligible to vote. Okay, in this case, we're talking about being a certain age. Once you become 18, you are given the privilege to vote or the right to vote. So she's saying that was when I was legally able to vote. I was 18 and I was able to vote. And it was the first election where Obama was elected into office. All right. Everyone was so excited. And I think in college, everyone wants to make a difference. Okay? So if you make a difference, you're saying that something or someone has an effect on something. So you can make a difference or something can make a difference, meaning it can have an effect on something. So they were all standing in line for hours just to vote. They, of course, were talking about people, specifically college students, because college students, once they become 18, everything is new. They're given the right or the privilege to vote. So they feel, wow, I can vote. I'm going to vote. So they were all standing in line, okay, for hours, for many, many hours, just to vote. Just in order to vote, they stood in line for many, many hours. Now, Eugene says, I think that particular election had a lot of media frenzy around it. Media, as we all know, but what is frenzy? This may be a familiar word to you because we've gone over that word a long time ago. Frenzy means just excitement, craziness, or even an uncontrolled situation. Okay, so he's talking about during that particular election, there was a lot of media frenzy. There was media all over the place. It's very uncontrolled. Okay, so it was a bit special. Yes, it was very different. It was very special. I think a lot of people paid more attention to that particular election. Okay, now Michelle says, just something about that election with the younger generation. What is she saying? With the younger generation, but something about that election. She's saying once again that something about that election was very special, especially among the younger generation. All the college students, they were coming to vote, wanting to make a change. Make a change and make a difference, I guess they're very similar in meaning. You can make a change or make a difference. Both means to have an effect. So she says, and I remember all the petitions and campaign strategies on campus. So she's saying on campus, at school, she was able to see all these petitions going on and campaign strategies. A strategy is, simply put, a method or a plan. Usually, that's made to gain a particular goal or a purpose, okay? Aimed for a certain purpose. Absolutely, Eugene says. I think in Korea, okay, the people who vote on their feet tend to be sort of the older generations, okay? Let's take a look at the sentence, okay? Now, he's talking about Korea, okay? The people who vote on their feet. This is our pattern for today. We'll be practicing this pattern or idiom later on with a sentence. But now, this is a bit tricky because Eugene said vote on their feet. Usually, we say vote with one's feet. Now, that is an idiomatic expression. But vote with one's feet has a completely different meaning. I think what Eugene meant in this case, vote on one's feet, he meant that people actually go there. Okay, they walk to a certain location. They're there in person to vote. So he's saying the people that usually vote on their feet tend to be the older generations. Simply put, I'll try to summarize this. He's saying in Korea, most of the people that actually go to the polling station to vote are older people, the older generation, okay? I'll give you some examples and another definition of vote with one's feet later on in today's actual expressions, okay? Now you understand what he's saying, right? Most people that vote in Korea tend to be older people. I think the voting age is similar. Yes, it's very similar, maybe 2 years apart. Around 18. In the US, yes, 18. In Korea, I believe it's closer to 20 years of age. But I think in Korea, it tends to bring out the conservatives on voting day. A conservative or conservatives. We're talking about people that do not want change. They're more comfortable or they want traditional ways. Okay, they're more used to the traditional ways of things and they are kind of against changes. And so these people are called conservatives, okay? All right, moving on. Michelle says, yeah, I think it's very interesting, but I think one problem, so she's talking about a problem, even in the States, even in the US, is what? Getting the younger people to vote. Now, this is a problem not only in Korea, but also in the States. But you know what? I think I'm seeing more and more of the younger generation voting. They're really taking part because they're more and more interested and they want to be a part of all these changes being made. So this is true, maybe more so many years ago, maybe 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. But definitely I would have to say, not only in the US, but also in Korea, more of the younger people or the younger generation are taking part in voting, which is a great sign, I think. Now, he asks, do you think it's important for young people to vote? Obviously, Michelle says, I think it's definitely important. Why? Because you can exercise your opinions and make a difference. It's a right that you have. Now, often we say exercise one's idea. You can exercise your freedom of speech, okay? You are expressing your thoughts, your opinions, okay? So you can exercise your opinions, meaning you can freely talk about it, okay? You can express it and make a difference. It's a right that you have. A right here, we're not talking about right or left. We're talking about a power perhaps, or even better, a privilege. We all have that privilege, that right to vote when we become a certain age. Righty says, if you have a feeling or an opinion about something, then you should go to the ballot station, also called a polling station, and cast your vote. Okay, so the place that we actually go to in person to cast our vote, it's called a polling station or also a ballot station. Okay, so he's saying if you want to express your thoughts and if you want to be a part of making a difference, if you want to vote, well, if you have a feeling or opinion about something, then go to the polling station and cast your vote. Now, cast here, C-A-S-T. Often, especially if it's used with vote, it means to throw one's vote. Simply put, vote. Cast your vote. Cast your vote means vote. Throw in this case, cast means to throw, but it's often used with vote. cast your vote, meaning vote. Okay, let's take a listen to the conversation one more time.
So one of the biggest things I remember from college was the first time I got to vote. And it was my freshman year in college, so my first year of college, everything was new. I just turned 18, so I was just legally able to vote. And it was the first election where, Obama was elected into office.
Okay.
So it was I just remember it was all this craziness. Everyone was so excited. And I think in college, everyone wants to make a difference. And so they were all standing in line for hours just to vote.
Well, I think that particular election had a lot of media frenzy around it.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy.
So it was a bit special, I think.
And I think, there's something about that election I remember more than any other election was, especially the younger generation, really, all the college students coming to vote, wanting to make a change. And I remember all these petitions and campaign strategies, even on campus.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think in Korea tends to be, the people who vote on their feet tend to be sort of the older generations.
Right.
I think the voting age is similar with all of our countries, around 18.
Right.
But I think in Korea it tends to bring out the conservatives on voting day.
Oh, yeah. I think I just remember when it's election days in Korea, when I'm watching a TV show, they'll have the pan on the bottom with all the votes and the percentages. And I think it's very interesting. And I think one problem is, though, even in the States, is getting the younger people to vote. How can you...
I mean, do you think it's important for young people to vote?
I think it's definitely important. You can exercise your, opinions and make a difference. It's kind of a right that you have.
Right. I mean, the biggest thing I think is, if you have a feeling or an opinion about something, well, then you should vote on your feet and actually vote.
Right.
Go to the ballot station and cast your vote.
Yeah, definitely. So hopefully younger people in the next election will be more represented.
Totally.
Welcome back, everyone. It is time for actual expressions. Let's take a look at a couple vocab words and then move on to our patterns. Okay, frenzy is our first word. Frenzy, frenzy. Stress goes on the first syllable, and we're talking about a certain craze. I mentioned uncontrolled situation, right? So keep that in mind. And some synonyms are excitement or even passion. Eugene was talking about, was it Eugene? Yeah, I think it was Eugene. He was talking about media frenzy, right? Moving on to strategy. I know that is a simple and rather easy word, but just to remind you, and just so that you don't forget, a strategy could be an approach, a plan, a method, or even a system. Okay? What about conservative? Here we go with the pronunciation. Conservative. Conservative. We had conservatives in today's actual talk conversation. They're also called right-winger or traditionalist. People that prefer the traditional forms or ways. They kind of oppose huge changes. Okay? Moving on to some more words. Right or rights. We're talking about privileges. Okay, so a right would be a privilege. What about cast? Now, you notice that it's used in the verb form in today's actual talk. In the noun form, it's also called plaster or cast. When we break our leg or even our arm, we go to the hospital and we need to get a cast or plaster, okay, until our bone heals. Now that is a cast in the noun form, but if it's used in the verb form, especially to cast a vote, it means to throw. Cast means to throw. So if you say cast your vote, it means vote. Or to actually put your ballot, okay, you choose who you want to vote for and put that piece of paper in the ballot box. So you're throwing your vote into the ballot box. That's why people say cast your vote. Okay, let's now move on to our patterns for today. Legally able to do something. You're not just able to do something, but legally, according to law or by law. In Korea, at what age are you legally able to vote? This is a question that you may get from a foreigner, okay? Whether it be someone from the UK, Australia, wherever, they could ask you, In Korea, at what age are you legally able to vote? Then you can say, you're legally able to vote at age 20. Simple as that. Moving on to our next one. Make a difference. To make a difference means to have an effect, okay? A single vote, meaning one vote, can make a huge difference. One vote can make a big difference. Okay, even one single vote can make a huge difference. It really can have a huge effect. Okay, moving on. Vote with one's foot. Now, I'm going to do some explaining to you. In today's actual talk, we had Eugene saying, vote on one's foot. I believe he meant to go in person to vote in today's actual talk situation. But here, this is an actual idiom. To vote with one's foot has a very different definition. It means to decide not to do something because you don't want to. Let's say, for example, you go to a performance, a concert, and it's boring. Then you can vote with your foot and leave. Vote with your feet and leave, which means basically you walk away. You walk away, okay? Here's a sample sentence. I'm more than prepared to vote with my feet if the meeting turns out to be a waste of my time. So what are you saying in this situation? This is a way of expressing your dissatisfaction about something. If you're unhappy about something, if you're not satisfied, you can say, oh, I really did not enjoy myself. If the meeting turns out to be a waste of my time, I'm not going to stay there. I'm going to vote with my feet and just leave. Okay? Hope you understand what that means. Practice this more on your own. All right, job well done. That is a wrap.